Chapter 54: A Reformed Alliance. The once volatile alliance, forged in the heat of conflict, had endured countless trials, emerging from the war scarred but unwavering. The alliance, originally born of necessity, had been tested repeatedly by the pressures of battle, political tensions, and the varying ambitions of its members. Yet, through every challenge, the bond between the kingdoms had not broken. It had merely been tempered, growing stronger with each ordeal. The victory they had secured together marked not just the end of a brutal conflict, but also the beginning of a new chapter, one that demanded the reconstruction and redefinition of their alliances in a time of peace. As the dust settled and the echoes of war faded, the leaders of the Allied forces found themselves confronted with a critical task: to reform and strengthen the bonds that had been both their salvation and their greatest vulnerability during the conflict. The unity that had been necessary for survival now had to evolve into something more sustainable and enduring. Diplomatic efforts, once focused on coordinating military strategies and resources, now shifted toward fostering deeper trust and cooperation. The leaders knew that the foundation of their victory lay not only in their collective might but in their ability to maintain a united front in the face of any future challenges. The reforming of the alliance was no simple matter. The war had left its mark, not just on the land and the people, but on the relationships between the kingdoms. Old grievances had resurfaced during the conflict, and new ones had emerged. Trust, while strengthened by their shared victory, still required careful nurturing. The leaders convened a series of high-level meetings, where they openly discussed the issues that had strained their alliance and sought to address them with honesty and transparency. These discussions were not always easy. Emotions ran high, and the scars of recent battles were still raw, but they were necessary for the alliance to move forward. In these meetings, a new understanding began to take root. The leaders recognized that their future cooperation could not rely solely on the fear of a common enemy, as it had during the war. Instead, they needed to build a relationship based on mutual respect, shared goals, and a commitment to the well-being of all their people. To this end, they began to draft new agreements, ones that reflected the lessons learned from the war and that aimed to prevent the kinds of misunderstandings and rivalries that had plagued them in the past. These agreements focused on trade, defense, and cultural exchange, seeking to bind the kingdoms together in times of peace just as they had been during the war. As these new agreements were finalized, the leaders made a conscious effort to involve their people in the process of alliance building. They understood that for the bonds between their kingdoms to truly endure, they had to extend beyond the ruling classes. Cultural festivals, shared infrastructure projects, and cross-border initiatives were launched to foster goodwill among the citizens of each kingdom. Over time, these efforts began to bear fruit. Old enmities started to fade, replaced by a growing sense of shared identity and purpose. The once fragile alliance was gradually becoming something more, a partnership built on trust and mutual benefit, rather than mere convenience. The transformation of the alliance was not without its challenges, but it was clear that something fundamental had changed. What had begun as a necessity born of desperation was evolving into a true coalition, one capable of weathering the storms of the future. The leaders, now more than ever, were committed to ensuring that the scars of the past would not dictate their future. They had come to realize that their strength lay not just in their armies or their resources, but in their ability to stand together, united by a shared vision of peace and prosperity. As they looked to the future, they did so with renewed hope and determination, knowing that the alliance they had forged in war would be the cornerstone of the new order they sought to build in its aftermath. In the early days of peace, the priority that emerged was clear and pressing: to stabilize and strengthen the alliance that had been the linchpin of their hard-won victory. The leaders of the coalition, though exhausted from the relentless demands of the conflict, understood that their work was far from over. The war may have ended, but the peace they sought to secure would require the same level of dedication and strategic foresight that had guided them through battle. The strength of their alliance would be the bedrock upon which a lasting peace could be built, and they could not afford to neglect this vital task. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, the leaders convened a series of high-stakes meetings and diplomatic discussions. These were no mere formalities, but critical gatherings where the future of their kingdoms and their collective security hung in the balance. The leaders came together, not just as victors, but as cautious architects of a new order. The discussions were intense, with every word carefully weighed and every concession thoroughly considered. They knew that the fractures and tensions that had surfaced during the war needed to be addressed head-on if they were to avoid future discord. The negotiations were challenging, marked by a delicate balancing act between asserting national interests and making necessary compromises. Old rivalries and fresh wounds from the war were still present in the minds of many, making the task of rebuilding trust all the more difficult. Each leader was acutely aware that the alliances forged in war were often tenuous, and without a strong foundation, they could easily crumble under the pressures of peace. The sessions were often long and grueling, with tempers flaring and moments of silence, as each party weighed the potential outcomes of their decisions. Despite the difficulties, a sense of shared purpose began to take shape during these discussions. The leaders, though representing different kingdoms with their own unique challenges, recognized that their futures were inextricably linked. The peace they sought was not just the absence of war, but a positive, enduring stability that could only be achieved through cooperation. This realization prompted a shift in tone, as the leaders moved from a mindset of wariness to one of cautious optimism. The common goal of rebuilding and securing a lasting peace started to outweigh the divisions that had previously held them back. To facilitate this process, the leaders began to draft a series of agreements and treaties designed to address the issues that had caused friction during the conflict. These documents were not just legal formalities, but carefully crafted frameworks aimed at promoting trust, ensuring mutual respect, and fostering deeper cooperation between their kingdoms. Provisions were made for joint defense initiatives, economic collaboration, and cultural exchanges, all intended to bind the kingdoms together in a way that went beyond mere convenience. The leaders knew that for the alliance to thrive, it needed to be rooted in shared interests and mutual benefit. As the negotiations drew to a close, there was a palpable sense of achievement. While the process had been fraught with challenges, the leaders had managed to lay the groundwork for a more cohesive and cooperative relationship. The alliance, once held together by the immediate threat of war, was now being reforged with the tools of diplomacy and mutual understanding. The foundation for a lasting peace had been set, and though the road ahead would still be difficult, there was a newfound confidence among the leaders that their coalition was strong enough to face whatever challenges the future might hold. The process of reforming the alliance was as challenging as it was essential, a task that demanded both diplomatic finesse and a commitment to healing the deep scars left by historical grievances and recent conflicts. The wounds of the past could not be simply papered over with new agreements. They required a genuine commitment to change and a willingness to address the underlying issues that had driven wedges between the kingdoms. The leaders understood that the success of their alliance depended not just on formal treaties, but on rebuilding trust and fostering a spirit of cooperation that could withstand future challenges. To this end, the leaders engaged in open and often difficult dialogues about their priorities and concerns. These discussions were marked by an honesty that was both refreshing and necessary, as each leader laid bare the fears and hopes that had shaped their actions during the conflict. There was an understanding that for the alliance to endure, they needed to move beyond the superficial and confront the deeper issues that had led to past tensions. These conversations were not without their challenges, as old wounds were reopened and long-held grudges resurfaced. but they were crucial in creating a foundation for genuine reconciliation. Throughout this process, the leaders worked tirelessly to align their goals and find common ground. They knew that the success of their alliance depended on their ability to move forward as a unified front, despite the differences that had once divided them. This effort required not just strategic thinking but also empathy and a willingness to see things from each other's perspectives. The leaders sought to understand the unique challenges and needs of their allies, recognizing that only by addressing these could they hope to create a truly stable and cohesive coalition. This dedication to unity was reflected in the series of agreements and compromises that began to take shape. These were not merely formalities or acts of political theater but carefully negotiated accords that addressed the concerns of all parties involved. Each agreement was a step forward, a testament to the leaders' commitment to building a stronger and more resilient alliance. The process was slow and often fraught with difficulty, but with each compromise, the bonds between the kingdoms grew stronger, their collective future more secure. The agreements reached during this period were diverse, encompassing everything from military cooperation and economic integration to cultural exchanges and mutual defense pacts. Each accord was designed to address a specific issue that had previously caused friction, ensuring that the alliance was not only stable in the present but also capable of withstanding the pressures of the future. These treaties were more than just words on paper. They were the manifestation of the leaders' shared vision for a peaceful and prosperous future. In the end, the process of reforming the alliance became a transformative journey for all involved. The leaders emerged from it not just as allies bound by necessity, but as partners united by a shared commitment to peace and cooperation. The scars of the past had not been erased, but they had been acknowledged and addressed in a way that allowed for healing. The alliance that had once been fragile and uncertain was now stronger than ever, a testament to the power of dialogue, compromise, and a genuine desire for lasting peace. As the reforms began to take shape, the impact on the alliance was immediately noticeable, marking a significant shift in the dynamics among the allied kingdoms. The renewed sense of cooperation transformed the way they interacted, leading to more effective coordination on various fronts. This change was particularly evident in the way the kingdoms now approached their shared challenges. Where once there had been hesitation and mistrust, there was now a growing confidence in their collective strength. This newfound unity allowed them to pool their resources and expertise, enhancing their ability to address both internal issues and external threats more efficiently. One of the most visible signs of this enhanced cooperation was the launch of joint initiatives aimed at tackling the pressing concerns that affected all members of the alliance. Economic recovery was a top priority, as the war had left many regions struggling to rebuild their economies. The Allied kingdoms worked together to establish trade agreements, share technological advancements, and provide mutual aid in areas that had been hardest hit. These efforts not only spurred economic growth but also fostered a sense of mutual benefit, as each kingdom saw tangible gains from their collaboration. Security was another area where the strengthened alliance made a profound difference. Recognizing the importance of a united front against potential threats, the kingdoms developed a coordinated defense strategy that involved joint military exercises, intelligence sharing, and the establishment of a unified command structure. This level of cooperation was unprecedented and served as a powerful deterrent to any would-be aggressors. It also provided a sense of reassurance to the citizens of each kingdom, who felt safer knowing that their leaders were working together to protect their collective interests. The reforms also had a noticeable effect on the relationships between the leaders of the allied kingdoms. The once tenuous bonds, strained by years of conflict and mistrust, were now characterized by a newfound stability and camaraderie. The leaders, having worked closely together to reshape their alliance, developed a deeper respect for one another's strengths and perspectives. This mutual respect translated into a more collaborative approach to decision-making, where the needs and concerns of each kingdom were given equal consideration. The alliance was no longer just a strategic necessity but had evolved into a partnership built on trust and shared values. As the alliance grew stronger, so did the sense of solidarity among the people of the allied kingdoms. The reforms had not only strengthened ties at the leadership level but had also fostered a broader sense of community among the citizens. Cultural exchanges, joint celebrations, and cooperative projects became more common, breaking down the barriers that had once kept the kingdoms apart. People began to see themselves not just as citizens of their respective kingdoms, but as members of a larger, united entity. This shift in perspective played a crucial role in solidifying the alliance's stability and ensuring its longevity. In the end, the impact of the reforms was far-reaching and transformative. What had started as a necessary response to the challenges of the post-war period had grown into something much more significant. The alliance, once fragile and uncertain, had become a robust and resilient force, capable of withstanding the tests of time and adversity. The collective efforts of the Allied kingdoms had not only secured their immediate future but had also laid the foundation for a lasting peace, built on the principles of cooperation, mutual respect, and shared prosperity. The transformation of the alliance was not merely a political achievement. It was a profound symbol of what could be accomplished when unity and cooperation were placed above discord and division. This reformation was a testament to the resilience and adaptability of the leaders, who had successfully navigated the complex and often fraught process of bringing together once fractured relationships. The newly forged partnership stood as a beacon of hope, showing that even the most deeply rooted tensions could be overcome through dedication and a shared commitment to a better future. The journey to this reformed alliance was marked by challenges that tested the resolve of the leaders. Each step forward required not only diplomatic finesse but also an unwavering belief in the possibility of reconciliation. The leaders had to confront historical grievances, manage present tensions, and anticipate future conflicts, all while maintaining a delicate balance between their kingdom's interests. Their success in doing so was not just a matter of strategy but of vision, a vision that saw beyond immediate gains to the long-term stability and prosperity that unity could bring. This transformation also had profound implications for the citizens of the Allied kingdoms. The renewed alliance signaled a shift in how the people viewed their leaders and their neighbors. No longer were they simply subjects of isolated realms. They were now part of a larger, interconnected community. This sense of belonging fostered a new spirit of collaboration at all levels of society, as people began to see the benefits of working together rather than remaining divided. The alliance's success in reforming itself provided a powerful example of what could be achieved when individual and collective interests were aligned. The symbolism of the reformed alliance extended beyond its immediate borders. Other kingdoms and regions, witnessing the success of this newfound cooperation, began to reconsider their own approaches to diplomacy and governance. The alliance became a model for others to emulate, demonstrating that even the most entrenched divisions could be bridged through sustained effort and a commitment to common goals. The leaders, aware of the broader implications of their achievement, took on a new role as ambassadors of peace and cooperation, sharing their experiences and lessons with others who sought to follow their path. In the wake of this transformation, the leaders found that their partnership had evolved into something far more robust than they had initially envisioned. The trials they had faced together had forged a bond that was both resilient and adaptive, capable of withstanding future challenges. This partnership became the cornerstone of the Reformed Alliance, a living testament to the power of unity in the face of adversity. The leaders, now more than just allies, were partners in every sense of the word, bound together by a shared history and a common purpose. Ultimately, the Reformed Alliance was more than just a political arrangement. It was a symbol of hope and a blueprint for the future. It showed that even in a world fraught with division and conflict, there was a path to reconciliation and unity. The leader's ability to navigate the complexities of reform and emerge with a stronger, more cohesive alliance provided a powerful lesson that with vision, determination, and cooperation, even the most fractured relationships could be healed, paving the way for a more stable and prosperous future for all. In the wake of these changes, the Allied kingdoms entered a period of relative peace and prosperity that had long been elusive. The stability fostered by their strengthened alliance created an environment where long-term strategies for growth and development could finally take root. This newfound calm allowed the kingdoms to shift their focus from mere survival to the advancement of their societies. With the immediate threats of conflict behind them, the leaders could now turn their attention to the constructive endeavors that would ensure the prosperity and well-being of their people. The alignment between the leaders was pivotal in this transformation. Having weathered the storms of conflict together, they had developed a deep mutual understanding and trust that enabled them to work in harmony. This unity of purpose allowed them to make decisions that were not only beneficial for their individual realms, but also for the alliance as a whole. They recognized that their fates were intertwined and that the success of one kingdom was inextricably linked to the success of the others. This realization fostered a collaborative spirit that permeated their governance, leading to policies and initiatives designed to uplift all members of the alliance. With this cooperative framework in place, the Allied kingdoms embarked on a series of ambitious projects aimed at revitalizing their economies and infrastructures. Trade routes that had been disrupted by the conflict were re-established, bringing a steady flow of goods and resources that fueled economic growth. Investments in agriculture, industry, and education began to bear fruit, as the people enjoyed the benefits of increased productivity and innovation. The leaders also prioritized the rebuilding of towns and cities that had been ravaged by war, ensuring that the scars of conflict were healed not only in spirit but also in the physical landscape. As the prosperity of the Allied kingdoms grew, so too did the cultural and intellectual exchange between them. The stability brought about by their alliance allowed for a flourishing of the arts, sciences, and philosophy, as scholars and artists traveled freely between the realms, sharing ideas and inspiring one another. Festivals and celebrations, once muted by the constant threat of war, now became vibrant expressions of the shared heritage and newfound unity of the kingdoms. This cultural renaissance not only enriched the lives of the people but also strengthened the bonds between the Allied realms, as they came to appreciate and celebrate their diverse yet interconnected identities. The period of peace and prosperity also allowed the leaders to focus on social reforms that had long been neglected during the years of conflict. Recognizing the need to address the inequalities and injustices that had contributed to the unrest in the first place, they implemented policies aimed at improving the lives of all their citizens. These reforms included expanding access to education, healthcare, and legal protections, ensuring that the benefits of peace were felt across all levels of society. The leaders understood that true stability could only be achieved if their people felt secure, valued, and empowered to contribute to the continued growth of their kingdoms. Ultimately, the Allied kingdoms emerged from this period of transformation not only stronger but also more resilient. The peace and prosperity they enjoyed were not simply the result of military victories or political maneuvers but were the fruits of a genuine commitment to cooperation and shared vision. The leaders, having successfully navigated the challenges of reforming their alliance, were now able to focus on the future with confidence. They knew that the strength of their partnership would serve as a foundation for continued growth, and that their united efforts would ensure the sustainability of the harmony they had worked so hard to achieve. The journey of reform had been anything but easy. The path was riddled with struggles, negotiations, and moments of doubt that tested the resolve of all involved. Historical grievances and the scars of recent conflicts were difficult to overcome, often threatening to derail the process. Yet, the leaders of the Allied kingdoms remained steadfast in their mission. They understood that the future of their realms depended on their ability to transform a once fractured alliance into something stronger and more resilient. The hardships they faced only served to deepen their determination to see the process through, knowing that the stakes were nothing less than the peace and prosperity of their people. As the reforms began to take shape, the results spoke for themselves. What had once been a tenuous and fragile coalition, held together by necessity and shared fear, evolved into a robust and cooperative partnership. The leaders had succeeded in not only mending the fractures that had threatened to divide them, but also in creating new bonds of trust and mutual respect. This newly forged unity allowed the Allied kingdoms to operate with a level of coordination and effectiveness that had previously been unimaginable. The challenges that had once seemed insurmountable were now met with a united front, proving the strength of their reformed alliance. The success of this endeavor was a testament to the resilience of the leaders and their unwavering commitment to building a better future for their kingdoms. They had faced down not only external threats, but also the internal divisions that could have easily torn them apart. Through perseverance, dialogue, and a shared vision for the future, they managed to turn their alliance into a foundation upon which the security and prosperity of their realms could be built. This achievement was not merely a political victory, it was a triumph of collective will, demonstrating that even the most fractured relationships could be healed with time, effort, and a genuine desire for reconciliation. As they looked ahead, the leaders did so with renewed confidence. They had navigated the complexities of reform and emerged with a partnership that was stronger than ever. The stability they had achieved through their cooperative efforts allowed them to plan for the future with a sense of optimism. They could now focus on the long-term development of their kingdoms, secure in the knowledge that their alliance would provide the support and collaboration needed to face any future challenges. This sense of security was a precious commodity, one that they had fought hard to attain and were determined to preserve. The Reformed Alliance had become more than just a political arrangement. It was a cornerstone of stability and prosperity for all the kingdoms involved. The trust that had been built through the process of reform was now the bedrock upon which they could construct a peaceful and thriving future. The leaders understood that the strength of their partnership would be tested in the years to come, but they also knew that they had laid a solid foundation capable of withstanding whatever challenges might arise. This shared confidence in their collective future was a source of great pride and a driving force behind their continued efforts to strengthen their bonds. As the years passed, the fruits of their labor became increasingly apparent. The Allied kingdoms, once fractured and weakened by division, now stood as a beacon of unity and cooperation. The Reformed Alliance had brought about a period of unprecedented stability and growth, allowing each kingdom to flourish in ways that would have been impossible on their own. The leaders, having shepherded their realms through this transformative process, could now look to the future with the assurance that their partnership would continue to be a guiding light for generations to come. The journey of reform had not been without its struggles, but the legacy it left behind was one of resilience, unity, and hope. Chapter 55: A New Order. In the wake of their monumental victory and the subsequent reform of their alliance, the leaders were confronted with a new and equally formidable challenge: the establishment of a new order. The conflict that had ravaged their lands was not a random occurrence. It was the culmination of deep-seated issues, long-standing grievances, and systemic inequalities that had festered for generations. The war had been a painful but necessary catalyst for change, and now, with the immediate threat of violence behind them and their alliance newly reformed, the leaders recognized that their next task was to address the root causes that had led to such widespread devastation. The leaders understood that true peace could not be achieved through military might alone. It required the creation of a system that would prevent the resurgence of old conflicts and ensure the stability of their realms. This realization marked the beginning of an ambitious effort to establish a new order, one that would be built on the principles of justice, equity, and mutual respect. The first step in this process was to convene a series of councils and assemblies, bringing together representatives from all corners of the Allied kingdoms. These gatherings were intended to foster open dialogue and allow for the airing of grievances that had long been ignored or suppressed. As the discussions unfolded, it became clear that the task before them was far from simple. The grievances were as varied as the people themselves, ranging from economic disparities and territorial disputes to issues of governance and cultural recognition. Each kingdom had its own unique challenges, and finding solutions that would satisfy all parties required a delicate balance of diplomacy, compromise, and innovation. The leaders were acutely aware that they were not merely addressing the symptoms of past conflicts, but were attempting to reshape the very foundations of their societies. One of the central issues that emerged was the question of governance. The old systems, which had concentrated power in the hands of a few, had proven inadequate in addressing the needs of their diverse populations. In response, the leaders proposed a series of reforms aimed at decentralizing power and creating more inclusive forms of governance. These reforms included the establishment of local councils with greater authority, the introduction of more transparent decision-making processes, and the creation of mechanisms for holding leaders accountable to their people. The goal was to create a system in which all voices could be heard, and where power was exercised in a manner that reflected the will of the governed. Another critical area of focus was the economy. The war had left many regions devastated, with infrastructure destroyed and resources depleted. The leaders recognized that economic recovery was essential for long-term stability, but they also understood that simply rebuilding what had been lost would not be enough. They needed to create an economy that was more equitable and sustainable, one that would prevent the kinds of disparities that had fueled past conflicts. To this end, they implemented policies aimed at redistributing resources, promoting fair trade, and investing in the development of previously neglected regions. These measures were designed not only to rebuild but to create a more just and balanced economic order. Cultural recognition and respect for diversity also became central to the new order. The conflict had highlighted the dangers of cultural homogenization and the marginalization of minority groups. In response, the leaders made a concerted effort to promote cultural inclusion and protect the rights of all peoples within their kingdoms. This included the recognition of minority languages, the preservation of cultural practices, and the establishment of laws to prevent discrimination. The leaders understood that a truly stable society was one in which all individuals felt valued and respected, regardless of their cultural background. As these reforms began to take shape, the impact on the Allied kingdoms was profound. The new order, though still in its infancy, started to foster a sense of hope and renewal among the people. The old wounds were far from healed, and challenges remained, but the foundations for a more stable and equitable future were being laid. The leaders, though weary from the burdens of war and reform, found a renewed sense of purpose in this work. They knew that the success of this new order would determine the fate of their realms for generations to come. In the end, the establishment of the new order was not merely a response to the past but a deliberate effort to shape the future. The leaders had learned from the mistakes of history and were determined to create a system that would prevent the recurrence of such devastating conflicts. The road ahead was long, and the work was far from complete, but they had set their kingdoms on a path towards a more just and peaceful existence. The new order, born from the ashes of war, held the promise of a brighter future, one in which the lessons of the past would guide them towards a more harmonious and prosperous world. The first step in this transformative process was to conduct a thorough analysis of the factors that had fueled the war. Recognizing the complexity of the issues at hand, the leaders assembled a diverse group of advisors, scholars, and representatives from across their realms. This team was tasked with an extensive review aimed at uncovering the multifaceted causes of the conflict. The intention was to gather a wide range of perspectives and expertise to ensure that all dimensions of the conflict were addressed. By pooling together insights from different fields and regions, the leaders hoped to gain a comprehensive understanding of the underlying issues that had driven their kingdoms to war. The analysis began with an in-depth examination of historical grievances. The advisors pored over centuries of records, treaties, and accounts of past disputes. They studied the historical narratives of various groups, looking for patterns of injustice and recurring themes of discontent. This process involved not only reviewing official documents, but also engaging with oral histories and personal testimonies. The goal was to identify long-standing issues that had never been resolved and that continued to influence current tensions. Understanding these historical grievances was crucial for acknowledging past wrongs and laying the groundwork for genuine reconciliation. Economic disparities were another critical area of focus. The conflict had been exacerbated by stark inequalities in wealth and resources, with some regions suffering from chronic poverty while others thrived. The analysis team conducted detailed assessments of the economic conditions across the Allied kingdoms, examining income distributions, access to resources, and the impact of war on various sectors. They identified regions that had been particularly hard hit by the conflict and assessed the ways in which economic imbalances had fueled resentment and unrest. Addressing these disparities would be essential for creating a more equitable and stable economic environment in the post-war era. Political injustices also played a significant role in the lead-up to the conflict. The team investigated issues related to governance, representation, and power dynamics within and between the kingdoms. They scrutinized the structures of political power, looking for evidence of corruption, exclusion, and abuses of authority. This involved reviewing governance practices, election processes, and the responsiveness of political institutions to the needs of the populace. By identifying areas where political systems had failed to serve their citizens effectively, the leaders aimed to implement reforms that would promote greater transparency and accountability. The comprehensive examination also included an analysis of social and cultural factors that had contributed to the conflict. The advisors explored issues related to ethnic and cultural divisions, social inequalities, and the marginalization of minority groups. They assessed how these social dynamics had impacted intergroup relations and contributed to the overall climate of discord. This aspect of the analysis was particularly important for ensuring that the new order would foster inclusivity and respect for diversity, addressing the social roots of conflict and promoting a sense of unity among the people. Throughout this process, the leaders maintained an open and inclusive approach, seeking input from all affected parties. They held public consultations and forums to gather feedback and ensure that the analysis reflected the experiences and perspectives of ordinary citizens as well as experts. This participatory approach was intended to build trust and ensure that the solutions proposed would be grounded in the real needs and concerns of the people. By involving a broad cross-section of society, the leaders hoped to create a more democratic and representative framework for the new order. Once the analysis was complete, the leaders convened a series of strategy sessions to formulate their response. They used the insights gained from the examination to develop a set of actionable recommendations and policies aimed at addressing the identified issues. These proposals were crafted with the goal of not only resolving immediate problems, but also creating a sustainable and just system that would prevent future conflicts. The recommendations were designed to be comprehensive and integrated, addressing economic, political, and social factors in a coordinated manner. The comprehensive nature of the analysis ensured that the new order would be grounded in a deep understanding of the conflict's root causes. The leaders recognized that true and lasting change required more than superficial fixes. It demanded a fundamental restructuring of the systems and relationships that had perpetuated discord. By addressing the underlying issues with a thoughtful and inclusive approach, they aimed to lay the foundation for a more harmonious and prosperous future, one that would be resilient in the face of future challenges and capable of fostering genuine peace and stability. Armed with their findings, the leaders embarked on the task of designing a new governance framework that sought to address the deep-seated injustices of the past and foster a fairer society. Their approach was grounded in the principles of inclusivity and transparency, reflecting a commitment to rectifying the disparities that had fueled the conflict. They understood that true transformation required not only acknowledging past wrongs but also implementing structural changes that would prevent the recurrence of inequality and division. The goal was to create a governance system that was equitable and responsive to the needs of all citizens. The first major area of reform was land distribution. Historically, land ownership had been concentrated in the hands of a few powerful families or groups, leading to widespread disparities in wealth and opportunity. The new framework introduced measures to redistribute land more equitably, ensuring that previously marginalized communities had access to vital resources. This involved the establishment of fair allocation processes and support programs to help displaced individuals and families rebuild their lives. By addressing land inequality, the leaders aimed to promote economic stability and social cohesion. Resource management was another critical focus of the new governance system. The conflict had exacerbated issues related to the control and distribution of natural resources, often leading to competition and conflict between different regions and factions. To address this, the leaders implemented reforms designed to create a more transparent and efficient management system. This included the creation of independent regulatory bodies to oversee resource allocation, as well as policies to ensure that resources were distributed in a manner that benefited all regions equitably. The goal was to reduce the potential for disputes over resources and promote cooperation among the various kingdoms. Political representation underwent significant changes as well. The previous system had been marked by imbalances and exclusion, with certain groups holding disproportionate power while others were marginalized. The new governance framework introduced reforms to ensure more equitable representation in decision-making processes. This involved revising electoral systems, establishing proportional representation, and creating channels for minority voices to be heard. By fostering a more inclusive political environment, the leaders aimed to build a system that was more responsive to the diverse needs of their populations. Each reform initiative was carefully crafted to balance the needs and interests of different factions. The leaders recognized that implementing changes in one area could have far-reaching implications for others, so they took a holistic approach to ensure that their reforms did not create new sources of discord. This involved extensive consultations with stakeholders, including community leaders, experts, and ordinary citizens, to gather input and address concerns. By engaging in dialogue and seeking consensus, they aimed to create solutions that were both effective and broadly supported. The leaders also focused on establishing mechanisms for ongoing oversight and accountability. To ensure that the new governance framework remained effective and adaptable, they created bodies responsible for monitoring the implementation of reforms and addressing any emerging issues. These oversight bodies were tasked with conducting regular reviews, gathering feedback, and making recommendations for adjustments as needed. By incorporating a system of checks and balances, the leaders sought to maintain the integrity of the reforms and ensure that they continued to serve the best interests of their societies. The implementation of the new governance framework was not without its challenges. There were instances of resistance and reluctance from those who were accustomed to the old power structures or who feared the loss of their influence. The leaders addressed these challenges through continued dialogue, education, and persuasion, emphasizing the long-term benefits of the reforms for the greater good. They worked to build trust and demonstrate the positive impacts of the changes, reinforcing the message that the new system was designed to benefit everyone and create a more just and harmonious society. As the new governance framework began to take shape, it became clear that the leaders had made significant strides towards creating a fairer and more stable society. The reforms, while complex and multifaceted, were laying the groundwork for a new era of cooperation and equity. The leaders remained committed to monitoring the effects of their changes and making adjustments as necessary to address any new issues that arose. Through their efforts, they aimed to build a legacy of positive transformation that would endure for generations to come, ensuring that the lessons learned from the past conflict would continue to guide their path forward. Implementing the reforms demanded a delicate balance between diplomacy and decisiveness, requiring the leaders to navigate a complex landscape of political, social, and economic factors. Recognizing the importance of gaining broad support for the changes, they embarked on an extensive process of consultation with a diverse array of stakeholders from various sectors of society. These consultations were designed to ensure that the reforms were well informed and responsive to the needs and concerns of different groups. The leaders met with representatives from community organizations, business leaders, and local officials, gathering input and addressing questions to build a foundation of trust and collaboration. Public forums and discussions were a crucial component of this consultative process. These gatherings provided citizens with opportunities to voice their opinions, ask questions, and offer suggestions about the proposed reforms. The leaders understood that engaging with the public in a transparent and inclusive manner was essential for fostering a sense of ownership and buy-in from the broader community. By actively involving citizens in shaping the new order, they aimed to create a more democratic and participatory approach to governance. The forums also served as a platform for educating the public about the benefits of the reforms and the rationale behind the changes. Despite these efforts, the implementation of the reforms faced significant challenges. Resistance from entrenched interests who were accustomed to the old power structures posed a major obstacle. These groups, which included influential individuals and organizations with a stake in maintaining the status quo, often pushed back against the proposed changes. Their opposition ranged from vocal criticisms to attempts to undermine the reform process through political maneuvering or lobbying. The leaders had to navigate these challenges with a combination of strategic negotiation and steadfast commitment to their goals. Skepticism from those wary of change also tested the leaders' resolve. Many citizens, while supportive of the idea of reform, were uncertain about how the changes would play out in practice. Concerns about the potential for unintended consequences, disruptions to their daily lives, or the effectiveness of the new policies were common. To address these concerns, the leaders engaged in ongoing dialogue, providing detailed explanations and updates about the progress of the reforms. They worked to build confidence in the new system by demonstrating its benefits through pilot projects and early successes. The leaders' commitment to creating a more just and equitable system drove them forward despite the challenges. They remained focused on the long-term goals of the reforms, understanding that the path to a fairer society would be marked by obstacles and setbacks. Their determination to address past injustices and build a more inclusive governance framework provided the motivation needed to persevere. They continued to emphasize the broader vision of a united and equitable society, reinforcing their resolve to see the reforms through to completion. In addition to their efforts to manage resistance and skepticism, the leaders also prioritized the establishment of mechanisms for monitoring and evaluation. They recognized that ongoing assessment was crucial for ensuring the effectiveness of the reforms and making necessary adjustments. Independent oversight bodies were created to track the implementation of the changes, gather feedback from stakeholders, and report on progress. These mechanisms helped to maintain transparency and accountability, allowing for continuous improvement of the new governance framework. As the reforms began to take effect, the leaders observed gradual but positive changes in society. The new system, with its emphasis on inclusivity and transparency, started to show tangible benefits. The public's confidence in the governance framework grew as the leaders demonstrated their commitment to addressing concerns and adapting to emerging issues. The reforms began to foster a greater sense of fairness and stability, contributing to a more cohesive and cooperative society. Overall, the process of implementing the reforms was a testament to the leaders' dedication and resilience. Through careful diplomacy, decisive action, and persistent engagement with stakeholders, they managed to navigate the complexities of creating a new order. The challenges they faced only strengthened their resolve, and the successful implementation of the reforms marked a significant step towards achieving a more just and equitable future for their kingdoms. As the new order began to take shape, its impact became increasingly evident across the allied kingdoms. The early stages of reform were marked by a palpable shift in the atmosphere, with the population slowly embracing a sense of stability that had been elusive for years. The measures introduced by the leaders aimed to address some of the most pressing issues that had plagued their societies, and the initial signs of positive change began to emerge. Communities that had once been marked by discord and unrest now started to experience a renewed sense of hope and optimism. Economic inequalities, which had been a significant source of tension and conflict, were gradually being addressed through targeted policies. Efforts to redistribute resources more equitably began to show results, as previously marginalized communities saw improvements in their living standards. Initiatives such as equitable land distribution, investment in infrastructure, and support for local businesses helped to create a more balanced economic environment. These changes were not immediate, but the steady progress was evident in the growing opportunities and improved quality of life for many citizens. Political representation also underwent a transformative shift as the new order emphasized inclusivity and fairness. Reforms aimed at broadening participation in governance led to the establishment of more representative and democratic institutions. Previously underrepresented groups were given a stronger voice in decision-making processes, ensuring that the diverse needs and perspectives of the population were considered. This increased inclusivity helped to build a more cohesive and unified political landscape, where the interests of various factions could be addressed more effectively. The leaders' concerted efforts to rebuild trust and ensure transparency played a crucial role in healing the rifts that had long divided their societies. By fostering open communication and accountability, they worked to restore confidence in the governance system. Regular updates on the progress of reforms, combined with mechanisms for public feedback, helped to demonstrate a commitment to addressing concerns and making necessary adjustments. This transparency was essential for rebuilding relationships and reinforcing the legitimacy of the new order. Despite these positive developments, the transition to the new order was not without its challenges. The process of implementing reforms was gradual and often fraught with obstacles. Resistance from entrenched interests, coupled with the complexities of enacting sweeping changes, posed significant hurdles. The leaders had to navigate these difficulties with persistence and adaptability, balancing the need for progress with the realities of resistance and the practicalities of change. Throughout this period of transformation, the progress achieved was a testament to the leaders' dedication and the resilience of their people. The gradual but tangible improvements in economic conditions, political representation, and social cohesion underscored the effectiveness of the reforms. The leaders' commitment to creating a more just and equitable society, combined with the unwavering support of the populace, played a pivotal role in overcoming the challenges and achieving meaningful progress. As the new order continued to take root, the positive impact on society became increasingly clear. The sense of stability and hope that had emerged began to translate into broader societal changes, with communities working together to build on the gains made. The efforts to address historical grievances, promote inclusivity, and foster transparency laid the groundwork for a more harmonious and prosperous future. In conclusion, the implementation of the new order marked a significant turning point for the Allied kingdoms. The changes brought about by the reforms began to reshape the fabric of society, fostering stability, addressing inequalities, and promoting inclusivity. The progress achieved was a reflection of the leaders' unwavering commitment and the resilience of the people, setting the stage for a brighter and more equitable future. The establishment of the new order marked a profound shift in the relationship between the leaders and their citizens. Where once the leaders had been primarily recognized as wartime figures, their roles had now evolved into those of visionaries and architects of a hopeful future. This transformation was not merely a change in title but a deep and meaningful shift in how they were perceived and how they engaged with their people. The transition from military commanders to peacemakers required the leaders to adapt their approaches and strategies to match their new responsibilities. As the leaders moved away from their wartime roles, they embraced their new position as custodians of peace with both dedication and enthusiasm. This change in focus allowed them to invest in long-term planning and development, addressing the needs and aspirations of their citizens with a renewed sense of purpose. They were no longer just strategists on the battlefield. They were now the architects of a stable and prosperous future. This evolution in their role enabled them to forge deeper and more meaningful connections with their people. The new dynamic between the leaders and their citizens fostered a sense of collective ownership over the changes being implemented. With the leaders focusing on building a lasting peace, there was an increased emphasis on involving the public in decision-making processes. Citizens were encouraged to participate in community forums, provide feedback on policies, and contribute to the shaping of their new society. This inclusive approach helped to build trust and ensure that the reforms reflected the diverse needs and perspectives of the population. The leaders' commitment to transparency and engagement played a crucial role in strengthening their relationship with the people. By openly communicating their vision for the future and actively seeking input from citizens, they demonstrated a genuine dedication to collaborative governance. This openness not only helped to address any lingering skepticism but also empowered individuals to take an active role in the rebuilding process. The sense of involvement and shared purpose fostered by these efforts contributed to a more cohesive and united society. The shift in the leaders' roles also brought about a change in public perception. The leaders, once seen through the lens of conflict and military prowess, were now recognized for their contributions to peace and reconstruction. This change in perception was accompanied by a growing appreciation for their efforts in creating a more just and equitable society. The leaders' ability to transition from wartime figures to peacemakers helped to build their credibility and strengthen their legitimacy in the eyes of their citizens. As the new order took hold, the leaders and their citizens worked together to navigate the challenges of this transformative period. The sense of shared responsibility and mutual support created a strong foundation for ongoing progress. The leaders' ability to connect with their people on a personal level and involve them in the rebuilding process was instrumental in fostering a sense of unity and collective achievement. This collaborative approach was key to ensuring the sustainability of the changes and the continued growth of the newly established order. In conclusion, the establishment of the new order represented a significant shift in the relationship between the leaders and their citizens. The transition from wartime figures to peacemakers allowed the leaders to build stronger connections with their people and foster a sense of collective ownership over the changes being implemented. This new dynamic not only enhanced the effectiveness of the reforms but also contributed to the creation of a more cohesive and inclusive society. The leaders' dedication to transparency, engagement, and collaboration played a crucial role in shaping a hopeful and prosperous future for all. Looking forward, the leaders remained vigilant in their efforts to sustain and build upon the new order. They understood that the success of their reforms depended not only on their initial implementation but also on their ongoing maintenance and adaptation. Recognizing that a static approach could lead to stagnation or unintended consequences, they committed themselves to an active and responsive governance model. This forward-thinking approach was integral to ensuring that the reforms they had worked so hard to establish would continue to serve their societies effectively. To maintain the integrity and effectiveness of the new order, the leaders planned for regular assessments of the system. These evaluations were designed to monitor the progress of the reforms and identify any areas that required adjustment or improvement. The assessments would involve a comprehensive review of various aspects of the new order, including its impact on economic stability, social equity, and political representation. By regularly scrutinizing the effectiveness of their policies, the leaders aimed to address emerging issues before they could undermine the gains they had made. Adaptation to changing circumstances was another critical aspect of their ongoing efforts. The leaders were keenly aware that the world around them was dynamic and that new challenges and opportunities would arise. Their commitment to flexibility and responsiveness meant that they would continuously refine and adjust their strategies to meet the evolving needs of their people. This proactive stance was essential for ensuring that the new order remained relevant and effective in a rapidly changing environment. The leaders also recognized the importance of involving their citizens in the maintenance and adaptation of the new system. They sought to foster a culture of engagement and feedback, where public input played a crucial role in shaping the direction of future reforms. Town hall meetings, surveys, and public forums were established to facilitate dialogue between the leaders and the populace. By valuing and incorporating citizen perspectives, the leaders aimed to create a more inclusive and democratic process that reflected the diverse needs of their society. In addition to these measures, the leaders prioritized the development of mechanisms for addressing grievances and resolving disputes. A robust system for handling conflicts and complaints was essential for maintaining public trust and ensuring that the new order remained fair and just. This included the establishment of independent review bodies and mediation services to address issues impartially and effectively. By providing clear avenues for redress, the leaders hoped to prevent dissent and dissatisfaction from undermining the stability of their governance. The leaders' commitment to continuous improvement was not only about preserving the new order, but also about fostering an environment of innovation and progress. They encouraged the exploration of new ideas and approaches that could enhance the effectiveness of their governance. This spirit of innovation was intended to drive the ongoing evolution of their society, ensuring that it continued to thrive and adapt in the face of future challenges. Looking ahead, the leaders understood that the stability and prosperity of their realms depended on their ability to balance immediate needs with long-term goals. Their efforts to sustain and build upon the new order were guided by a vision of enduring success, where the reforms they had implemented would serve as a foundation for future growth. This vision included a commitment to fostering economic development, social cohesion, and political stability, all of which were essential for ensuring the continued well-being of their people. In conclusion, the leaders' vigilance and commitment to sustaining and building upon the new order were crucial for ensuring its long-term success. By planning for regular assessments, embracing adaptability, involving citizens, addressing grievances, and fostering innovation, they aimed to create a governance model that was both resilient and dynamic. Their efforts were guided by a vision of lasting stability and prosperity, reflecting their dedication to creating a better future for their realms and their people. In establishing this new order, the leaders had undertaken a monumental task of not only addressing the root causes of their previous conflict, but also setting the stage for a more harmonious and prosperous future. The upheaval and struggles of their recent past had provided crucial insights into the systemic issues that had fueled discord and instability. This understanding guided their efforts to craft a governance framework designed to prevent the recurrence of such deep-seated conflicts. The framework was built on principles of fairness, inclusivity, and transparency, aimed at addressing both historical grievances and emerging challenges. The new governance structure was meticulously designed to rectify past injustices and create a more equitable society. By tackling issues such as economic inequality, political exclusion, and social division, the leaders sought to heal the wounds that had once driven their realms to the brink of disaster. The reforms implemented were not merely symbolic but substantive, intended to dismantle entrenched power structures and establish mechanisms for fair representation and resource distribution. This comprehensive approach was crucial for laying the groundwork for long-term stability and harmony. The leaders' commitment to preventing the recurrence of conflict was evident in the strategic planning and policy formulation that characterized their efforts. They emphasized the importance of ongoing dialogue and engagement with all sectors of society, ensuring that the voices of various communities were heard and considered. This inclusive approach was designed to build a sense of shared ownership and responsibility among the populace, reinforcing the stability of the new order. The leaders recognized that sustained peace required active participation and cooperation from all levels of society. As they moved forward, the leaders remained steadfast in their conviction that their efforts would yield a legacy of peace and stability for future generations. They understood that the true measure of their success would be reflected in the enduring prosperity and cohesion of their realms. To this end, they continued to invest in initiatives that promoted economic development, social welfare, and environmental sustainability. These initiatives were integral to ensuring that the benefits of their reforms were felt broadly and equitably across their societies. The establishment of the new order was also marked by the creation of institutions and practices designed to uphold the principles of justice and equality. Independent oversight bodies were established to monitor the implementation of reforms and address any issues that arose. These institutions were tasked with ensuring that the governance framework remained effective and responsive to the needs of the people. By embedding mechanisms for accountability and transparency, the leaders aimed to foster trust and confidence in the new system. The transition to the new order was not without its challenges, but the leaders approached these obstacles with a determination to succeed. They recognized that the process of change required patience and perseverance, as well as a willingness to adapt and refine their strategies. Despite the difficulties, the leaders remained optimistic about the future, drawing strength from their collective resolve and the progress they had achieved. Their ability to navigate these challenges was a testament to their leadership and the resilience of their people. Looking ahead, the leaders' vision for the future was one of continued growth and development. They were committed to building upon the foundation they had established, striving to create a society characterized by unity, prosperity, and justice. This vision encompassed not only the maintenance of the new order, but also the pursuit of innovation and progress. By fostering a culture of collaboration and forward-thinking, the leaders aimed to ensure that their realms thrived in the face of evolving challenges. In conclusion, the establishment of the new order represented a significant achievement in the leaders' quest for lasting peace and stability. Their efforts to address the underlying issues that had led to conflict and to build a more equitable and inclusive society were central to their vision for the future. Through strategic planning, inclusive engagement, and the creation of robust institutions, they laid the groundwork for a legacy of harmony and prosperity. The leaders' dedication to this vision underscored their commitment to creating a better future for their realms and their people. Chapter 56: An Unforeseen Challenge. The sun had barely risen over the newly reconstructed city when an unexpected crisis emerged, casting a daunting shadow over the leaders' hard-earned progress. The city, which had begun to thrive under the stability and prosperity achieved through their relentless efforts, was suddenly threatened by a situation that seemed poised to unravel the fabric of their recent successes. The crisis struck without warning, challenging the very foundation of the new order and putting at risk the delicate balance of their reformed alliance. Mara and Kale, who had grown increasingly confident in their roles as architects of this revitalized era, now found themselves facing a formidable test. The unexpected challenge not only jeopardized their political achievements, but also strained their personal bond. The crisis required swift and decisive action, forcing them to confront their deepest fears and uncertainties about their ability to maintain the stability they had worked so hard to establish. The pressure was intense, and their responses would determine whether the progress they had made would withstand this new threat. As they grappled with the unfolding crisis, Mara and Kale had to navigate a maze of difficult decisions and potential pitfalls. Their ability to collaborate effectively and draw upon their shared experiences from the conflict was crucial in devising a strategy to address the situation. The crisis tested their problem-solving skills, leadership qualities, and the strength of their relationship, revealing both the depth of their resolve and the vulnerabilities that lay beneath their confident exteriors. The stakes were high, and their responses would be closely scrutinized by both their allies and their people. Despite the gravity of the situation, Mara and Kale remained determined to confront the challenge head-on. They understood that their ability to overcome this unforeseen obstacle would not only affect the immediate stability of their realms, but also shape the future trajectory of their leadership. With their resolve tested, they had to rely on their experience, mutual trust, and the lessons learned from their past struggles. As they worked to address the crisis, their partnership was put to the ultimate test, highlighting the resilience and adaptability required to navigate the unpredictable nature of governance in a newly reformed era. The fragile peace established in the wake of their monumental efforts was soon threatened by a series of mysterious incidents that began to unravel the progress made. Critical resources essential for the ongoing rebuilding efforts and the daily lives of the citizens were reported missing or sabotaged. These vital supplies, which had been carefully allocated for the city's reconstruction and aid to struggling communities, seemed to vanish without a trace, creating a growing sense of unease and frustration among the populace. The disappearance and deliberate tampering with these crucial resources sparked widespread discontent throughout the city. The disruption of the flow of supplies not only hindered the reconstruction but also exacerbated the difficulties faced by the most vulnerable members of society. As the shortages continued and the situation grew more dire, rumors of corruption and betrayal began to circulate, further inflaming public sentiment. The once stable environment was now clouded by suspicion and fear, threatening to derail the fragile peace that had been so hard-won. As discontent spread, the leaders who had been symbols of unity and strength found themselves in the crosshairs of public scrutiny. Accusations of mismanagement and corruption began to surface, casting a shadow over their credibility and authority. The once clear image of competent and trustworthy leadership was now marred by doubts and allegations. The leaders were forced to confront a restless and questioning public, whose confidence in their ability to govern was increasingly undermined by the unfolding crisis. In the face of this destabilizing challenge, Mara and Kale were compelled to address the situation with urgency and transparency. The credibility of their leadership was at stake, and the resolution of this crisis would require a careful and strategic approach. They needed to restore faith in their governance, investigate the sources of the sabotage, and take decisive action to rectify the shortages and alleviate public concerns. The task was daunting, but their response would be critical in determining whether they could navigate this unforeseen obstacle and preserve the stability they had worked so hard to achieve. In response to the escalating crisis, Mara and Kale took immediate action by convening an emergency council. The urgency of the situation necessitated a rapid and coordinated response, bringing together a diverse group of advisors, military leaders, and representatives from the regions most affected by the resource shortages. The council's meetings were intense and fraught with tension, as they grappled with the gravity of the disturbances and the need to restore order swiftly. The leaders' commitment to uncovering the truth behind the thefts and sabotage was unwavering, but the path to resolution proved to be arduous and complex. The council worked tirelessly to investigate the thefts and prevent further damage, employing all available resources and expertise. Each lead was meticulously scrutinized, and every suspicion was pursued with diligence. Despite their best efforts, the perpetrators of the sabotage remained elusive, their motives and methods shrouded in mystery. The lack of concrete progress only intensified the frustration among the council members and heightened the sense of urgency to resolve the crisis. The ongoing uncertainty was exacerbating the already strained atmosphere within the council and among the citizens. As the investigation dragged on, the delays in resolving the crisis contributed to mounting frustrations among the populace. The shortages continued to impact daily life, and the initial relief and optimism following the reform of the alliance began to erode. The public's patience wore thin as the situation persisted without resolution, leading to growing discontent and further erosion of trust in the leadership. The leader's ability to manage the crisis and provide timely solutions was being constantly tested, placing additional pressure on Mara and Kale to act decisively. The prolonged crisis also took a toll on Mara and Kale's relationship, straining their once solid partnership. The intense demands of managing the emergency, coupled with the mounting frustrations from their citizens, created a challenging environment for collaboration and decision-making. Their ability to maintain unity and effective communication was critical, but the stress of the situation tested their resolve and their connection. Despite the pressure, both leaders remained determined to navigate the crisis and restore stability, knowing that their actions during this turbulent time would define the future of their leadership and the trust of their people. As the crisis unfolded, the personal strain on Mara and Kale became increasingly apparent. The pressure of managing the emergency while maintaining their leadership roles placed an immense burden on their relationship. Their once solid partnership, forged through years of shared challenges and victories, now faced significant strain. The dual demands of addressing public discontent and investigating the sabotage intensified the emotional and practical challenges they encountered, leading to a notable shift in their interactions. Mara and Kale's differing priorities began to surface more starkly under the stress of the situation. Mara, focused on maintaining order and addressing the growing public concerns, became increasingly absorbed in the logistical and political aspects of the crisis. Her determination to restore stability often put her at odds with Kale, who was deeply troubled by the betrayal and the threat it posed to their hard-won achievements. This divergence in focus led to frequent clashes and heated arguments, further straining their already fragile partnership. The intensity of the crisis exacerbated the existing rifts between them, making communication and collaboration more difficult. Mara's drive to implement immediate solutions and quell public unrest often conflicted with Kale's need to uncover the truth behind the sabotage and address his own sense of betrayal. The resulting tension and moments of doubt cast a shadow over their once harmonious working relationship, adding a layer of complexity to the already challenging situation. Despite their efforts to manage the crisis and support each other, the emotional toll of the situation created a rift between them. The combined weight of their responsibilities, coupled with their differing approaches to the crisis, made it increasingly difficult to maintain a unified front. As they struggled to reconcile their roles with their personal connection, both leaders faced the daunting task of navigating their strained relationship while striving to resolve the emergency and restore their once stable leadership. Despite the growing tension between them, Mara and Kale recognized the urgent need to put aside their personal conflicts for the greater good. The gravity of the crisis demanded not only their leadership but also their unity, and cooperation. They both understood that their effectiveness in resolving the emergency hinged on their ability to work together harmoniously. With this realization, they committed themselves to overcoming their differences and refocusing on their shared goal of restoring stability and trust. Determined to address both the external crisis and their internal discord, Mara and Kale took deliberate steps to reconcile their differences. They initiated joint briefings and strategy sessions, making a concerted effort to present a united front to the public. By coordinating their responses and maintaining open lines of communication, they aimed to reassure the citizens and reinforce confidence in their leadership. This collaborative approach was crucial in demonstrating their commitment to resolving the crisis while also mending their fractured partnership. The process of rebuilding their relationship was as critical as addressing the immediate issues posed by the sabotage. Mara and Kale engaged in candid conversations and worked through their disagreements with a renewed sense of purpose. Their efforts to understand each other's perspectives and find common ground were integral to their ability to lead effectively. The strain of the situation tested their resolve, but their shared commitment to their leadership roles and each other drove them to persevere through the challenges. In reconciling their personal conflicts, Mara and Kale not only strengthened their partnership but also reinforced their leadership. Their ability to address the crisis while navigating their own differences showcased their resilience and dedication. As they worked together to restore stability and trust, their renewed unity became a symbol of hope for their people, reflecting their determination to overcome adversity and build a stronger future. As the investigation into the sabotage deepened, a critical breakthrough emerged that shifted the course of their efforts. Evidence began to point toward a faction within their own ranks, individuals disillusioned by the recent changes and intent on undermining the new order for their own gain. This revelation, though deeply troubling and a blow to their trust, provided Mara and Kale with a clear target. The realization that the threat came from within their own ranks allowed them to focus their efforts and strategize more effectively. With this new intelligence, Mara and Kale swiftly mobilized their resources to confront the conspirators head-on. They implemented a series of targeted operations aimed at uncovering and neutralizing the faction responsible for the sabotage. The task was far from simple. It required meticulous planning and execution to avoid further inflaming public sentiment or causing additional unrest. The leaders had to navigate a complex web of intrigue while managing the potential fallout of their actions. The process of addressing the sabotage and rooting out the conspirators was painstaking and required careful management. Mara and Kale worked tirelessly to ensure that their actions were both effective and measured, striving to prevent any further disruption to the fragile stability they were working to restore. Their efforts involved extensive collaboration with loyal advisors and security personnel, and they took steps to communicate transparently with the public to maintain trust and prevent panic. Gradually, as the conspirators were identified and dealt with, Mara and Kale's combined efforts began to yield positive results. The stability and confidence that had been so severely tested started to be restored. The leaders' decisive actions and careful handling of the situation not only addressed the immediate threat, but also reinforced their commitment to the new order. Their perseverance in the face of adversity demonstrated their dedication to safeguarding the future of their realms and restoring the faith of their people. In the aftermath of the crisis, Mara and Kale emerged with a newfound depth of understanding regarding both their own vulnerabilities and the resilience of their partnership. The unexpected challenge had pushed them to their limits, exposing weaknesses in their individual and collective resolve. Yet, it also revealed their remarkable capacity to adapt and overcome adversity, ultimately providing them with a profound appreciation for the strength of their bond. The intense experience had tested every facet of their relationship, from their professional coordination to their personal trust. Through the trials they faced, Mara and Kale discovered that their partnership was not just a symbol of their shared leadership, but a vital asset in their ability to navigate crises. The process of overcoming the sabotage and restoring order had fortified their connection, demonstrating that their unity was a critical component of their effectiveness as leaders. The crisis, though daunting and fraught with challenges, ultimately served to reinforce the foundation of their leadership. It became a defining moment that underscored the importance of unity and trust in managing the complexities of their new order. The way they confronted and resolved the unforeseen challenge showcased their commitment to not only their roles but also to each other, highlighting their dedication to building a stable and prosperous future. As they moved forward, the lessons learned from this crisis informed their approach to leadership. The experience had solidified their understanding of the delicate balance between personal and professional dynamics and underscored the need for continued vigilance and adaptability. The renewed sense of partnership and commitment they carried with them was a testament to their ability to face any future challenges with confidence, guided by the unity and trust that had emerged stronger from the crucible of adversity.